Hey everyone, I'm Joe, and today I'm going to be doing a book review of Revenant Gun by Yoon. This is a science fiction book, and it is the third and final book in what is now known as the Machineries of Empire trilogy. There will be a short story collection book set in the same world at some later point, but for now this is fully finished and fully self-contained. Now, the first book is 9 Fox Gambit, which gained a lot of attention and did extremely well and was extremely popular. I greatly enjoyed it, obviously. Then the second book was Raven Stratagem, which again was popular and gained a lot of support and did well, and I really liked that too. And now this is the third book, and overall this comprises a very interesting trilogy with some rather curious ideas, which I greatly loved and thought rather well of, and I would definitely be interested in what Yoon does in the future. But I will now get on to the review, and first of all I will start with the background that this world and indeed the trilogy is setting. So first of all, this world is called the Hexarchate. This is a galaxy spanning civilization, and their system of government and system of essentially sort of everyday working life is a calendrical system, which is using advanced mathematics to govern every single aspect of virtually everybody's lives. You follow fairly rigidly to certain lines. So if you are part of a different faction, of which there are 6 in the first book, then you must follow certain rules and guidelines, because that's just how the system works. The system has been evolved over many years, decades and generations, and now everybody is very sort of fixed rigidly into these sort of castes and factions, and you can't really change once you're in one. If you're in the military branch, you're in the military branch forever until you're either dead or you're too incapacitated to go on. Likewise, there are mechanical divisions essentially, which are dedicated to sort of invention and creation and technology. There are leadership divisions and such essentially, and I mean I'm oversimplifying this, but you get the idea. It's very factioned, very focused divisions for the most part, and every character is part of one of these factions, and indeed that is where the main characters come in, because they fit into specifically the military division, which is called the Kel. The Kel use something called Instinct Order. Instinct Order is essentially a way, when the soldiers become Kel in the initial sort of training phases, they are forced into this way of thinking on a very basic and primal level that they must follow with the instinct command, this basic command. If you don't, the soldiers will feel ill and frankly they just won't function correctly, so you must follow orders of superior officers. It's basically, think of an extreme version of the military, but this one is where the commands are enforced a lot more sort of nastily in a way, in a rather more severe manner than normal. So it's just a case of you be told off and with a reprimand you might get something on your record. This, you'll actually be ill and things will happen from there, and that's just a good day, frankly. So yeah, you obey orders and that's it. There is no other way around it. In the first book, the main 2 characters belong to this caste essentially, or at least did at one point, and that is Shuas Jedo, who started off as this normal soldier and then he became this incredibly good general. He was basically known as being completely unstoppable. He won every fight, every battle he was part of because of his unusual tactics. However, he also became known because sometimes, and indeed after one particularly notorious battle, he killed everybody on his own ship, as you do, and his entire own army as well. So he's also known as a mass murderer. Now, this could be excused from the point of view of the government for a while, but not when he kind of had a habit of doing it. So basically they had to take him out and kill him. They didn't kill him fully, however, they just killed him physically, because his mind they essentially stored in what was called a black cradle, which they could then use as and when they wanted to. However, to use this general, Jedo, again, they needed a person to sort of implant his consciousness into, essentially like an open vessel. And occasionally they did this, although it was normally not a good idea for the vessel, because the vessel normally had fairly severe problems afterwards, as you might expect. In the first book, he is implanted essentially into the consciousness of a Kel, a military caste soldier called Cheris, and together they are tasked with putting down a rebellion of heretics in this one particular fortress and in this space battle, and of which they do. And it's an interesting combination because they both are trying to understand each other, and it's just interesting. I don't want to go too much into it because frankly it's quite involved anyway. Then in the second book, Raven Stratagem, this is one where they've become used to being together in one body. Cheris is now feared almost as much as Jedi in a way, because obviously she's got Jedi's mind in her, so her ability to lead and focus on people is now sort of as scary as frankly his was. And she can do this because she's learning from him. She's learning things from him and she's becoming a force in her own right. And this might become a problem for the government, because the government wants compliant soldiers who will do their orders and that's it. And ideally, from their point of view, they just want soldiers who will do their work and then job dead afterwards, because that's the efficient way from their point of view. And the events in the second book are rather interesting. The events in the third book, this is set almost a decade after Raven's Stratagem. Cheris no longer has the mind of Jedi as part of her now. She still has his memories, of course, but his personality and his sheer sort of essence isn't there anymore. That's been removed. But she's been in hiding and has been, unknown where she has been for the last 10 years. And people would very much like to know, because she is feared now, because she has all the knowledge of Jedi without his personality, which means that she can also know his military tactics. So people are kind of scared that she could technically become a kind of like an alternative Jedi. And this is not good for the government, because the Hexachite itself is now fractured and broken badly. The calendrical system is basically collapsing, and in many places has already collapsed. And there's one particular guy nearby, Kujan, who is basically one of the leadership caste as such. He essentially wants to unify everything that's remaining of the Hexachite and the calendrical system and bring it into one order, his order. He's basically an egomaniac, and he's also a sociopath as well, because he doesn't really understand people other than what he needs to manipulate them. He's a very disturbing, dark character, but a brilliant one. He featured in the previous two books, but to a much lighter extent. And this book is almost Kujan's book, really. The first was Jedi, the second was Cheris, this is Kujan. And this mix of having a primary character sort of switching in each book is one that I think is brilliant, and he's a really interesting character because he's not a nice person by any means, but you get to, well, half like him I suppose by the end of the book, which makes what he does rather interesting, because he does do some pretty debatable decisions, let's say. To put it like, I don't want to say too much because I'll slowly give away spoilers. But yeah, he wants to gain power, and as they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And in this case, this is no different, because he's now trying to control the whole Hexachite by himself. Before there were multiple leaders, now he wants to be the only one in charge, and everybody conforms to his ideas, his will. He's stereotypical, egomaniacal leader, basically, the dictator, essentially he's becoming, and it's not been quite like that before. Yes, it's military dictatorship, but it's a combined military, though. It's not just one person in control of the military, but that's the way he wants it to, and this leads to problems because of various reasons. And he uses the memories of Jedi, which he still has from the Black Cradle, though they're now different from what they were, to try and get Jedi up and running in a different format. And there is also Cheris to contend with and this creates some interesting dynamics and problems for him that he doesn't know how to deal with entirely. He thinks he does, but this is a very strange new world, new world order he's dealing with, so he has to tread carefully, otherwise he'll be destroyed, frankly. As far as the points of view go in this, there are quite a few of them overall. Some of the chapters, and indeed this is something different from the previous 2 books, are set in the past, because this is obviously set 10 years after Raven's Stratagem. Some of them jump back just after the events of Raven's Stratagem to explain certain ideas and certain concepts that need to be brought forward, because obviously they didn't exist in the second book, or at least so likely that you couldn't just bring them back into this book because it would be strange. So you go back and they are developed, and then you can use them in present chapters. The point of views also alternate between different characters. It's mainly on the same couple of characters, but there are a few interesting ones, like a servitor, for instance. Servitors are AI machines. They're essentially small robots that get various, small day-to-day chores done. One of them, which the point of view follows, is called Semiola, and it's an interesting point of view because it's a machine intelligence, and it's sentient machine intelligence, but it has to obey orders like the rest of them, like the cow, for instance. It's in a similar situation to the cow, but not exactly. And Semiola takes part in the plot in a rather interesting way because it is this small servitor robot, and it's a curious character. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to go into how it becomes curious. It could give away things away, but it's an interesting character which you will remember because, frankly, the idea of servitor robots being a major part of the plot is something that you don't come across too often, but it works extremely well in this book. It really does, because it's just a really interesting and fun character, which I really enjoyed reading about. The world building is, again, really good. Obviously, there's not quite as much world building as the previous 2 books, but then again, this is the 3rd book in the trilogy. This is focused on character development more, and indeed the ideas already created in the 1st and 2nd books, and indeed the world created in the 1st and 2nd book. It doesn't need that world building to quite the same level. It's still there, just slightly lighter. But that is often the case in the 3rd book. You've already got the world established, so it's just a few things you need to update and bring in. But it's the plot more focused. You can sort of forget to a degree the world building. As far as the topics are discussed go, this discusses society, revolution, and societal change. None of these things are easy to do because, of course, society is a large entity, a large idea, and it doesn't change and alter easily. And frankly, most of the time, it doesn't like doing it, especially when you've got people in power who like being in power. They don't want things to change because if the more things change, the less likely it is that they will remain in the power. And generally, unfortunately, most people that generally get in power are obsessed with power, so they don't want to lose that, and they will do some pretty nasty things to stay in power, as in the case of the character Kujin, because he tries to benefit people, but he will do things as needed to make sure he stays where he is, or indeed elevate his own position. There is no way he's giving in and just going to fade away. That's not his style. And indeed, that's a normal leadership position, unfortunately, and one that is explored and discussed in a rather interesting way in this book. So, overall, this is a really well written and well developed story. It has really interesting, curious characters which you don't come across often in science fiction books, at least I personally haven't. It has some parts that are quite difficult to figure out. Like I said, the calendrical system isn't the easiest, but once you do figure it out, it feels like a great achievement because of how difficult it actually can be, especially to a reader like me that I haven't encountered this sort of systems before in books, so it's a new experience, and I feel like a great sense of achievement, which is really nice to feel in books. It's not normally something that I often feel in books. Normally systems and the way the world works in books are normally more obvious, so there's no achievement there because you just understand them instantly. With this, you do have to seriously think of it and try and work out how this calendrical system works and how the factions and everything within it works together into something greater than some of their parts, and it does feel like an achievement, and I really did enjoy it for that reason, amongst many others. The world is different from usual, and it also makes you think, and frankly this book is one where it just makes you think about some really quite interesting ideas and concepts. It's got some unusual writing but brilliant writing, and overall I would highly recommend this book to anybody who is very much into science fiction, which obviously I am, because it has just everything about it is just frankly really interesting and really well written and frankly fantastic overall. You do need to have read the first and second books, unsurprisingly. I mean, this is the third book in a trilogy, but I would also recommend them as well because they are fantastic, frankly. Without going into details too much, they're both just as well written as this one is, and this is a really good and fitting end to a trilogy, which I am very happy that I've read, and indeed in a few years' time I will read it again and get a few more things out of it, because this is a trilogy that can be easily reread, and indeed should be reread to get those little extra things out of it which are buried here and there, which are really interesting and fun to explore. With that said, that is it for this review. If you've read either the first two books or indeed read the whole trilogy including this one, then please leave a comment. If you would like to read this third book, then again leave a comment and we can have a discussion. All my social media links, as well as links to anything else that is appropriate, can be found in the description box below, as always. And with that said, that is it for this review. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.